Good day, everybody, and welcome to this webinar. My name is Peter Manda, one of the co-founders here at Workflex. You might see me squeezing my eyes a little bit today. You might even see tears rolling down my cheeks today. That's not because I'm very emotional. I'm not emotional at all, to be honest. But I got my eyes lasered on Monday this week, so the light is pretty sensitive. I might even pull up my glasses if it becomes a little bit too annoying for me. So apologies for that upfront. I'm seeing the world a little bit blurry, but that's okay. And I'm very happy to moderate this event today on the topic of global risks and how they escalate in minutes, because they do in various manners. We've seen natural disasters recently, of course, earlier this week, the biggest storm I think ever for the island of Jamaica hit Jamaica. We've seen floodings also closer to home in Spain last year. We've seen a lot of political and societal unrest, not even calling them wars, but also riots in US cities or in Paris. And also, if you, let's say, play it down a little bit, societal unrest leading to intensified border controls, especially in the US, where iPhones or whatever phone you're carrying might be checked, but also closer to home in the EU Schengen area, Germany reintroducing border controls. And that's all related to the global risks. And that's the topic that we're going to talk about today. I'm not doing that on my own. I brought a stellar panel, if I can say so. We're going to quickly introduce them to you. Bex, very much welcome. And may I ask you to introduce yourself?
Hello, thank you so much for allowing me to be here, inviting me to be here with this esteemed group of individuals who I know will have a passion for travel risk management. So my name is Bex Deadman. I am a travel risk management consultant, and I'm also a co-founder of the Travel Risk Academy. And we are putting out the first professional qualifications for travel risk managers to be able to legitimize the roles that they do and really kind of carve out travel risk management as a profession moving forward. So thanks again, and I'm delighted to be part of this conversation.
Yeah, great to have you, Bex. Thank you. Darren, you're up next.
Okay, so again, thank you very much for having me. My name's Darren Kelly. I'm a security and risk management consultant. I've worked globally in a range of hostile, critical, and medium risk countries, ensuring that clients can operate there as safely as possible. So yeah, that's been my work.
Very good. Yeah, the emergency specialist today. The medical specialist today, Joerg, you're up next.
Yes, thank you. Good morning from my side. My name is Joerg Reichel. I'm a general and traumatic surgeon. I had a university career and changed around 20 years ago to the healthcare risk management. What does it mean? I'm sending with a global company patients with a certain disease to certain doctors all over the world. And this is what my job will be in the next time, doing it for Workflex and their clients. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and great to have you here with us today, Joerg. And last but not least, Shuba.
Hi, everyone. So Shuba, head of product at Workflex, so deeply involved in all our existing products, but also super excited for our new product line, which is Workflex SOS.
Amazing. Thank you very much. So very simple agenda today. Of course, we love hearing ourselves talk, but we're definitely doing this for you. If you have any questions in the meantime, dear audience, you can simply put them in the chat, and then I'll do my very best to try and have anyone from the panel address them. 3 topics. What is the duty of care? Because we've talked about now these global risks and how they escalate in seconds, and obviously the relevance for you as an employer sending people around is very big, and it's basically covered under the term of employer duty of care. So we're first going to talk a little bit about what is that exactly, and then also about how to put the duty of care into practice, especially focusing, of course, on an emergency situation with Darren and also on medical situations with Joerg. And then at the end, we do a WorkFlex SOS demo because, well, we're not doing this webinar for nothing. We've partnered with all the people here to create a really cool SOS product for employers at WorkFlex, and we'd like to show it to you. So that's for the agenda. I'll probably just stop. I'll keep sharing. Why not? Bex, starting with you, very open question, but can you explain what the duty of care actually is?
I'm going to give it a go. We talk about it a lot. So look, I think it means different things to different people in different contexts. So I'm going to try and sort of get back to the basics. There's two kind of variants of duty of care when we're thinking about business, not just business travel, but business generally. So we are thinking of the legal side of it. So in some countries, duty of care is stemmed in law and legislation. And there's also an ethical side to it. And when it comes to travel risk management, we're sort of talking about both of those things. But what duty of care is fundamentally is the position that an organization who is asking an employee to do something, anything, be working in a certain environment or doing a certain job, they must be given the tools to protect them in that environment, to keep them safe, and to ensure that they can do the role that they've been asked to do safely and they're not putting themselves in undue danger. And it comes to fruition in law if an employee feels that those limitations or those boundaries haven't been met and can basically put forward a case of negligence. So it's quite hefty when it comes to law. But ultimately, from an ethical perspective, we're putting some boundaries on organizations. We're saying you can't just ask somebody to do something that's potentially going to put them at risk or their lives at risk, or anything else that's kind of connected with that. You have to put some foundations in place. When it comes to travel risk management, that's when it gets interesting, because the easiest way to think about duty of care in practice today is think about health and safety. Think about perhaps if you're working in an office environment, be that at home or in an office, people will have come and found out what height you need your chair, what size you need your monitor, just thinking about the strain on your body. That is a duty of care to you in the workplace. When we think about travel risk management, the whole thing shifts because it's around looking after people when they're on the move. And that's what makes things a little bit more complicated for people. But I like to call it people risk management and look at it in a slightly different way. And then we start thinking about the things that can happen when people travel. Does that help?
I think that helps very well. Thank you very much. And maybe good to add, so from my nerdy lawyer perspective, indeed, it's a legal obligation. The bad news is it's not so clear what it is, right? The duty of care, you have to do everything that is reasonably possible. The good news is that this rule is more or less in place and very similar all around the world, right? So I think you're in the UK, Bex, right? I'm in the Netherlands, Shuba, you're both in Germany. This rule is quite broad and similar around the world, correct?
Yeah, it does vary, and there are sort of different versions of it, which actually we kind of take pains to go through in some of the stuff we do at the Travel Risk Academy, because when you're dealing with the travel program, you've got to be aware of the different laws in the different lands that you're traveling to. But really, yes, there is an overarching duty of care based on employment law that says that you should be paying due diligence to what your staff are doing and providing them what they need to be able to do the task safely. And like I say, when we open it up to travel risk management, that becomes much bigger than just enabling travel to high-risk countries. We're actually now thinking about our vendor management programs. We're thinking about the properties we're allowing people to stay in. And actually, what it's doing is kind of uncovering some stuff that perhaps wasn't there. So it's a really exciting time to be part of travel risk management. The standards are developing, so 31030 supports it, and we'll get into that later, I'm sure. But there's more things coming. So anything like this and what you guys have developed at WorkFlex SOS is really exciting, because you're looking at this in a different way. I hope we kind of get into that today when we're talking, because I'm behind what you guys are doing.
Very good. Yeah, thanks very much. I think Darren is having some trouble logging in, logging off, camera disabling, but hope you can still hear us. Darren is still with us. maybe just quickly back. So obviously we've got a emergency specialist with us today. We've got a medical specialist with us today. Is there, if you look at the duty of care for employers, especially when people are traveling abroad internationally as business travelers or expats, is there any other, or maybe let's say more process-focused topic to be discussed or to be considered as well? Like, what do you need to do other than, well, making sure you've got medical and emergency specialists at hand, or at least specializations upfront informed with them?
Yeah, so there's quite a big bit, and people will have either had a look at the standard, you can purchase it, it's not very expensive, and it gives you currently guidelines as to kind of what you need to think about, because travel risk management isn't just being able to outsource the issue to medical companies or assistance companies. It's about actually understanding what your program is, and putting a framework around that to enable your travelers to travel safely. So right now, for most organizations, they've probably got some good stuff around high-risk countries. If they're traveling to what they would consider a high-risk area, they will have more technology, more processes, etc. involved. But when it comes to low-risk countries, or perhaps medical incidences, which account for about 90% of all calls that come through, it's not generally kidnap and ransom and the kind of stuff that we talk about a lot from security. It's the everyday stuff. And as organizations, we're not necessarily dealing with that well at the moment. We don't track it. We don't, unless it kind of gets into an insurance claim, we don't really know about it at all. Most travelers just kind of brush it off and get on with it. And they don't even necessarily report it to their line manager. So what we're trying to put in is a framework, much like companies have had to do for cybersecurity, much like they've had to do for quality management, what they will be doing for their health and safety. So these big management standards that companies are adhering to, travel risk management is sort of moving into that space and saying that this is not the responsibility of a travel security manager or a line manager. This is the responsibility of the entire organization. And actually done well, the data that we use within travel risk management, as you guys are exploring, can actually fulfill a whole host of needs over the organization whilst keeping travelers safe. So we're entering a really interesting space because technology is developing fast. This data that felt unmanageable is now manageable, and we can really help our clients, help our staff in a different way. So there's a whole piece where the organizations have to know who they are, why they travel, and actually build some processes and policies around that, which then links into the providers that they're using.
Very good. Yeah, thanks a lot. I think that perfectly explains the foundation. And then there's medical and emergency situations that can, of course, occur. Joerg, starting with you as a medical specialist, how do you see, well, especially focusing on preparing your people to travel abroad, and what should employers and employees be doing from a medical perspective?
Yes, Peter, you're using the right word. I always say be prepared. What does it mean? Plan ahead. You have to do plannings before going on vacation, and research. First point would be, for example, research your destination. Search for local care, or e.g. hospital locations or ambulances around where you're staying. This is what I'm now saying. There a lot of hands-on and deep in practice, but at the end, we offer this from WorkFlex side in a kind of security briefing. And there is something around the certain healthiness of the traveling person, means taking prescription with on the way, packing an emergency kit, and what we saying every time, coming back to be prepared, get a travel vaccination. What we are doing is we know which vaccinations are needed in certain countries, and we were sending the security briefing to the clients and saying, visit a travel clinic and have an update on your travel vaccinations. That's what this means, that you confirm your vaccinations on the one side, and you have an update on the other side. And what we are offering also is cooperation with travel insurance. Why? The reasons behind are a travel insurance is covering in general medical treatment, a trip interruption, or maybe a repatriation as needed. And this is what we always do recommend and say, once again, be prepared. And if you have this in the package from the medical side, you can stay and you can start your vacation.
Thanks a lot. Maybe so what if, I can imagine, right, just human thinking, like, well, I'll do a very limited preparation maybe in my mind, but nothing much really. But then, of course, let's say shit hits the fan, excusez le mot. What could be the consequences of bad preparation, medically seeing, when employees are traveling abroad?
Yeah, the consequence is that you're trying to find out who will help me, who can help me. And therefore, we are offering a 24/7 hotline that everyone who is traveling abroad can contact us. We're working with Workflex hotline, and we're working together with an insurance hotline, means travel insurance hotline, so that everyone who's abroad can contact us and tell us what's happening and what's going on. And then we react, focused on a so-called traffic light, means we were taking the complaints from the traveler, and then we say, okay, green light, we can handle it via the hotline. Yellow light, please, for example, visit on the next day or in the next week a hospital or ambulance, or try to contact a big hotel, because hotels abroad do have always a similar service. Or the travel lights are changing to red, and then we are acting directly, means we are contacting local partners, we are sending ambulances, and we are securing for maybe hospital stay.
Great. Yeah, thanks. I think a very good explanation, and basically in a summary, right? If you send around your people to travel for business, like Beck said, you want people to do their job abroad. It's the least you can do as an employer, to at least come prepared, and then be prepared also for the different situations that occur. I think if we focus on emergency situations, Darren, I hope your connection works now. You've seen, well, quite spectacular situations, but can you maybe tell a story about how maybe a smaller situation escalated quite significantly?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will just highlight, this story is quite extreme, and actually you're more likely to face a medical issue that Dr. Joerg is going to talk about than you are this story. But I was working overseas, providing support to a client, and one of those elements was travel risk management, because of the nature of the area in which they were operating. Now, all they had to do was fill out a form, send it to the risk management team. The risk management team would assess their proposed route, journey, etc. And on this occasion, that hadn't happened. And we weren't aware of that until the office manager of the client in question received a phone call from some people alleging that they had kidnapped 3 travelers. And as a result, and the follow-up that then took place, we found that actually 3 travelers had traveled, unbeknownst to us, and had been kidnapped. And so had the form been filled out, had we done the assessment, we would have probably advised not to take that route, because there had been several instances over the 48 hours of attempted kidnappings. And so we knew that there had been an escalation in that area, and we would have advised a change of protocols, a change of route, etc., the whole host of things we could have done. The result was, one, extremely stressful for the 3 individuals kidnapped. Thankfully, it was financial, not political, and therefore primary aim of the individuals that had kidnapped them was to extort money. There's an issue for your reputation. If you lose 3 people, most organizations will keep it very quiet that they have lost 3 people through kidnapping. And then, of course, there's the financial implications of having to pull in teams from all over the globe to try and resolve that situation for you. So there's a whole host of problems created by ultimately just filling out a form and following the processes and protocols. So quite extreme, but yeah, we're talking about something quite minor to something, yeah, quite scary at the other end.
Yeah, that's how things escalate super quickly. I guess this was probably, let's say, a tropical destination where a lot of employers rather send people to, well, maybe not so spectacular destinations, or just people traveling to London or the US, or just, let's say, places where kidnapping is hopefully not really to be expected. Why, Darren, should we still also prepare as an employer, but especially also prepare our travelers for emergency situations if they just travel to, let's say, what we consider normal locations?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I hate to use Copenhagen. I use Copenhagen as an example regularly. So it's considered low risk, but that's not to say that you as an individual traveling, take the gender, take the various elements of diversity that make each one of us individual. We are open to a whole range of different threats. My interpreted threats are very different to Bex's threats, for example. They're generally speaking, we're both susceptible to weather, monsoon, etc. Maybe not in Copenhagen, but my individual interpretation of the situation would be very different. And so ensuring that we do that for each individual, because go to Copenhagen, the crime, the cyber issues, bag theft, and all these things which they appear relatively minor, sexual assault, sexual harassment, these type of things will take place globally. It doesn't have to be at the extreme end of kidnapping to have a significant effect on an individual or on the organization if they fail to deal with it correctly. So yeah, it's extremely important across the range of threats and risks.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And your company, Callida Freemont, also you support WorkFlex in that regard, but also in general, you support employers with preparing for, let's say, emergency situations, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So part of what we do is the preparation element. So based around, as Bex was saying, ISO 31030, which is an excellent standard for an organization to understand. We've developed training that is short and sharp and focuses on the key threats that individuals are likely to face. And the majority of travelers will travel low and perhaps medium. The high and the criticals will always be the things that grab the attention, but the majority of people will have faced sexual harassment or crime, data theft, etc. And those really are the things to focus on. They're the bulk of things. But because they're almost part of the norm, and I hate to say that, because they are part of almost an accepted norm, they're almost glossed over with, and I know Bex loves this term, well, we've got insurance to cover this. We can deal with it after the incident. And we're much better to have, as Dr. Joerg said, that preparation element so that we as an individual takes a degree of responsibility for our own actions, and then we're more likely to be able to operate safely.
So it's already mentioned now twice, ISO 31030, and yes, Bex, I know you love it indeed. I do think it's a great guidance also, especially what you said, Darren, to kind of keep a broader focus, because, oh, look, we can all imagine that you want to prepare for kidnap if you've got people traveling to certain places, or if for real medical emergencies as well. But it nicely guides employers to consider the much broader topic of business travel risk management, right? Bex, can you maybe introduce to us ISO 31030 a little bit?
For sure, yeah. So it came into publication in 2021, so it's 4 years old now. And in fact, it will be going for review. ISO standards go for review every 5 years. However, there's been a lot of work going on in the background, which I will tell you a little bit about as well, because there's things happening. It's been one of the sort of best received standards kind of ever, certainly from the risk committee after obviously 31,000, which is the mother standard of risk management. But it's been particularly well received, not just by organizations sending travelers away, but also by the supplier side. So both from security, from assistance, travel companies are getting there now, but everyone's sort of had a real interest in this, because actually we've all been selling duty of care for quite some time, but we didn't really have anything to measure ourselves against. Corporates don't even often have security teams, depending on the size of the company, let alone a travel manager. And it kind of sits siloed across companies when they're thinking about this space. So what 31030 did was just say, actually, let's look at a business trip from start to finish. And what are the things that we should be doing in advance, during, and post in order to ensure that that person can deliver that trip as safely as possible. And the reality is, as shocking as it is, that actually organizations are quite far away from what 31030 says is good. We use a maturity scale when we deal with travel risk management. And whilst a lot of organizations are thinking about it and they're now putting travel risk management positions in place, again, it's generally been when we've been focusing on enabling travel to high-risk countries. So travel risk management's been pigeonholed quite heavily in that area. And actually, we're talking about, as we've said, a much wider perspective, because travel policies have been written historically by risk takers, by the executives of an organization who travel all around the world and who are kind of immune to things happening. And if they do, they just kind of deal with them. So as other types of people have come into business, be that females coming into the executive board, be that us being more aware and more considerate of people's mental health, physical health, things that might be going on in their private lives that might be affecting their work. All of this stuff is actually kind of coming to fruition now. And it makes us the unique individuals that we are. And up until now, travel policy, a travel and expense policy hasn't really done anything for that space. It hasn't considered the individual needs. And that's what we're really doing now. We're sort of turning things on its head. But it does mean a much more knitted up approach as to how companies manage travel. So thinking about the different stakeholders involved across that entire program. We've done it for technology. We've done it for cyber. We're now thinking about how we do it for people when they're moving. And that's really where travel risk management is heading. As far as the question that is always asked is, 31030 is a guidance standard. Is it going to be a certification standard? What's going to happen? So I'll just answer that question for everybody in advance. That's the work that we have been doing for the last 3 to 4 years. So I'm the convener of a group both for BSI, so the British Standards Institute, but also for an ISO ad hoc group. And we have been looking at how do we develop 31030? What does the audience want? What do they need? So many working groups over actually sort of 3 to 4 years now. I'm heading out to Toronto at the end of in a couple of weeks to have a big meeting around the next stage of this. But what we're presenting and what's been agreed within the focus groups that we've done is that the future is potentially management system standards. So think about 27 and those other standards I was talking about earlier in cyber and other areas. But 2, one for travelers, one for organizations with travelers, but also one for travel service providers, because there's a bit of a gap here. And if you're a travel manager managing your accommodation program, just take that alone, let alone all the other suppliers, you need to know that they've got certain things in place. And at the moment, we're not checking any of that. So we're looking at a future of 2 standards, to both of them certifiable, to really allow companies who want to make sure that they've got things in order to have a real benchmark to be able to do that, and an auditable benchmark. So really exciting things happening. It's not going away. I kind of feel like travel risk management is what health and safety was 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah, I agree. So this is not going away. I think it's getting more, let's say, relevant by the day. Business travel growing very fast again. Obviously, the let's say, political and also natural situation that we're looking at, I think, urges for it very strongly. I think that definitely covered one of the questions that maybe you in the audience had. Is it going to be a guidance only or actually certifiable in a few years? Just a reminder, if you have any questions, we're now talking to, let's say, a travel risk management specialist, a medical specialist, and emergency specialist. So please put in any questions that you may have. And Bex, you've already touched upon it. So we've looked at preparation, let's say, from a process perspective, and also medical and emergency. But of course, ongoing safety from a medical perspective is very relevant. Joerg, coming to you, I can imagine that people traveling abroad, employees traveling abroad, let's say, would logically run into two situations. First, what you described earlier as an orange or yellow situation where, look, it's not super urgent, but you should probably go and see a doctor, or something's really off. Have you seen in your experiences already cases of this, and in the relevance of then as an employer having taken measures, or also as, let's say, medical experts, the specialties around the international setup of this medical emergency?
Yeah, Peter, it's depending on the diagnosis always, and the what you're trying to do is to find out which symptoms are really existing or not. For example, there is calling a traveler and talking about chest pain, for example. And chest pain can mean everything and nothing. It can be a cold, or it can be a heart infection. And that is always a little bit difficult. And this is why we're working on this green, yellow, red system, that we try to find out how deep are these symptoms affecting the healthiness of the traveler. The next example is the difference between dizziness and vertigo. Dizziness, we can say, for example, take a medication, lay in bed, stay for 24 hours or something else. But vertigo, there has to be a real vertigo. There has to be a clarification with the doctor in the medical practice or in a hospital. The next example you see, Peter, I'm coming more from the diagnoses or findings. What can we find out during the telephone call with a traveler? And we have, for example, injuries on the one side, means, for example, you were talking about your eyes this morning. Eye injuries are a certain reason to send the patients immediately, to send the travelers immediately to a hospital. There's no discussion at the end. Stomach pain also, there has to be a clarification, and something like, and the next example after example, next example for allergy or a drug reaction, or a reaction on what they have eaten or drunken. So this is always a situation where the people at the 24/7 hotline are trying to find out what are the real symptoms, or what are the urgent symptoms. Do we have to react in time, or do we have, or can we say you can wait for 12 or 24 hours? This is always the play. And how do we do this? I'm coming back on red, orange, and green. The caller or the traveler is sampling points, and the more points, the more urgent it is. And we were giving it from the case from the call center to a medical doctor, to a physical doctor.
Thanks. Very good examples, I think. And I just want to emphasize what Bex already earlier said, that this is a responsibility that you as an employer have, right? So I think it's already quite annoying being on a business trip and just not feeling well, and then also having to sort out, well, who can I call to get actually the diagnosis like you, Joerg, are talking about. Really important to, as an employer, get arrangements in place so that the employee can figure this out together with a specialist easily and efficiently, also whilst being abroad. I think for an emergency situation, Darren, that's pretty obvious. So if there is indeed a very, let's say, critical emergency situation, like a kidnapping, or an individual ends up in the midst of riots or something, of course, also you need to do something as an employer, as an employee. What type of processes get triggered from your perspective as a specialist?
So I think our hope is always when we're working with an organization that they have a crisis management plan in the first place. And if they don't have that, then it's time to build one of those, because it will effectively guide you to decide what constitutes a crisis within your organization. So for different organizations, they will have different risk appetites and risk tolerances. And so once you can work out where you sit, then you know, okay, we know what constitutes a crisis for us. And then within that, building into the protocols for each of the individuals that will be involved in that crisis management team, because there will be a range of individuals, and understanding, I suppose, what the key crises are that you've identified. So what are your threats to your organization, to your people, to the business, to your reputation, and how that works. And then I suppose you've actually got to train on your crisis management plan and have a degree of redundancy in terms of the individuals involved, because a crisis doesn't, you might be very lucky. It might present itself at midday on a Monday. That's fine. Everyone's in the office. This is great news. And we all happen to be in the same room at the same time. But more often than not, you will have people dispersed. And so you may need other people to step into a role, either temporarily or for the duration. You might not have that role assigned. And so that's extremely important, to run these scenarios so that everyone understands what they may be asked to do, and having those protocols. Because in a stressful situation, your mind is running at 100 miles an hour, and it's often easier to be able to run through a checklist of what to do. And so that's generally what we would advise people to have in place. And depending on the nature of the crisis, will depend on the people that you have to bring into the crisis management team. So HR, finance, your IT, cyber, communications are absolutely critical in this, in terms of how you communicate with either the individuals involved or within the organization, so internal communications, or if you have shareholders and key stakeholders, that external communication to ensure people and reassure them that you have the situation under control. So the situations may be complex, but actually working through it is not as complex as you'd imagine. I think that's why a lot of people avoid, the training exercise, because they think, actually, I'm going to be exposed, but it's more of an opportunity than that. And actually, and I'll be careful how I say this, because it could sound a little bit mercenary, but actually how you respond to this and how you choose to communicate that can actually be very positive in terms of your organization. So I wouldn't necessarily see this as just a threat. And finally, when you do go into this crisis management team element, you're focused very much on dealing with the immediate, but actually having people that are looking at the recovery element and how quickly you can get back to business as usual is also extremely important. Because what you don't want to do is get to the end of the crisis and go, okay, well, now we need to get the business going again, because you've already lost a lot of time. So it's a lot of things going on, but it's not necessarily as complex as you would imagine.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing. Things a very good one. Mark, I see your question. I'll give Beck some more time to think about it as I share my screen again and hand over to you, because what we've tried to do basically is gather all the knowledge and specialisms and the processes, etc., into a product. And Shuba, you're going to introduce that to us and also do a little bit of a demo before we then answer the question.
Thanks, Peter. So you have already heard what Bex, Joerg, or Darren talked about. So what we did is we collected all the inputs and see how we can build kind of a best solution, part of WorkFlex SOS, to fulfill the duty of care at every stage when the employees travel, right? So I will cover very briefly here what stages and what do we do in every stage, and then I'll show a quick demo of our product as well. So the first is the pre-travel. So Dr. Joerg also kind of touched base that very briefly as well. What are the preparation we want to do? So as part of our solution, we know the information of a particular traveler who is traveling, the nationality and the gender and so on, and the destination country. So what we do is we prepare a very personalized health and safety briefing. I will also show during the demo how it looks like. So the key goal is to have a very concise and needed information rather than like a 20-page pre-travel document and stuff like that. The next is during the travel, right? So that is also when things go really bad or when an emergency situation occur. So we also have an alert system that we work with. So we will also send alerts whenever there is an emergency need for it, and also the hotline support. It's also the key point for us during the travel as well. And all of this information is also part of the pre-travel guide. And the last but not least is after the travel is completed, right? So everything around administrative works happens there, the insurance claims reporting and all of the bureaucratic stuff happens. And let me share the screen to give a quick overview of how our product look like. Okay, so this is an overview, or we call it as a dashboard that we show. You're seeing this?
No, we're seeing the PDF of the PowerPoint, Shubha.
Yeah, okay. Then
Yeah,
now you're seeing the map, right? Yeah, okay. So this is the dashboard that we show to the employers. So the employers can decide who wants to see this dashboard, right? So I'm assuming it's mostly the security or the SOS team or even the HR admins. The key goal here is to give a comprehensive overview of the threat level of every country at any point of time. That's the one aspect of it. And the second aspect is who are the employers or employees currently in this particular country, right? So this gives a full comprehensive visibility to the employer at any point of time what's happening in the world. So here some are self-explanatory. Clearly, green means it's a low risk or low threat country, and red being the high threat. So that's the one key aspect that we'll see here. And the second key is, in this case, it's all our test customer, right? So in this case, you can see we click on Afghanistan. Somebody is traveling at this point in this date in Afghanistan, and okay, you will have some base information here, because at WorkFlex, we know we are integrated with different travel tools. And also the clients feed this information to us as well. So it's very automatically integrated information. So we already have the complete trip information. So it also gives the employers to go and see the full details of the particular employee. So that's the first aspect. And then the second aspect, what you see here is the alerts. So what do we do is at any point in time when an emergency situation arises, for example, Jamaica case 2 days ago, so we sent an alert directly to the employees, right, via SMS as well as via email. So this is to keep the employees up to date on what's happening in this particular destination country. In addition to that, what we thought is it's really useful for the HR admins also, or for the employers, to have an overview on what's happening, who received it. This is the Jamaica alert, right, that went to this particular employee that was traveling on these dates. So the employers also, or the HRs also, have a full overview of what's happening and who is informed at what point. So for us, this is a key goal, to keep the employers well informed on what's happening on the crisis time. The second key point is, what does the employee gets when the trip is being prepared, which is the health and safety briefing. So I'm going to share my second screen for this. So this is the one we prepared, like a very comprehensive one-page document at the max too. So this was the one prepared for one of our test customer going to Sudan. So you can see we give the local emergency information. And the first support is always our WorkFlex SOS or our hotline support, like Dr. Joerg also mentioned during the discussion earlier. In addition, we also provide the insurance hotline. So if you have our travel insurance, we use that information. But if the clients wants to also have their own specific insurance information, we can also feed it there, right? So at this point, employee is well informed about what information, where he needs to contact to at any point in time. Oh, by the way, we are also working on WhatsApp as well as live chat integration, because that's also feedback and the requirements we get from clients that sometimes that come in very handy as well. As you can see, it's structured around two different key aspects. The different stage, I already covered it earlier. One is pre-travel and one is during travel, and it's very customized. So it's a bit different when a male traveling to Afghanistan versus a female like me traveling to Afghanistan, right? So we personalize the information as much as we want in here. So yeah, this is a quick overview of how our product look like. So it's already live, and we are getting all the feedback, and also we are getting all the suggestions from our experts to keep this product, to bring it to the top-notch product. Yes, Peter, back to you.
Very good. Thanks a lot. And I see that the question has already been addressed by you, Bex, in writing. Very good. Maybe just to summarize also for the broader group, I think it is a very good one. We've now addressed or emphasized the importance of this and shown a potential solution that one can obtain in the market. Bex, how would you, let's say, convince leadership of this in general?
Look, I think what I want to try and get across, and why I accepted obviously to do this webinar with you guys, is because we're always talking about trying to create a travel risk management committee or a group or a focus group within the organization that transcends one department and is representative of some of the departments that Darren was speaking about earlier, but also potentially the travelers themselves, the approvers, the bookers, and all of that other kind of community that is part of your program. But often what we see is that travel management, travel security is all global mobility. It's all managed separately and in silos. And each one of those silos is working with a certain technology sector. And actually, most of those technologies are beginning to have some of the same things. So it's very common for a TMC to have a traveler tracking tool. It's very common for an assistance company to have a traveler tracking tool. And so on. Everybody has sort of things in common. You may have various insurance policies that also give you access to assistance companies, but you're also paying for assistance through global mobility, but travel aren't using it. There's lots of things that are kind of in our way. And unless we come out of our departments and have conversations, it's difficult to do that. So what I like about your product specifically, and this isn't me trying to sort of sell to you, it's sell your product. It's just that it emphasizes this idea that actually the data is useful for the finance team, for the immigration teams to understand actually, do we have any tax issues? Do we have any problems with people overstaying visas? Are we going to get fined? Because countries are getting smarter now and companies are getting done. We know this, it's happening. But actually, that travel data is also incredibly useful for being able to monitor your program and understand where your travelers are and to get alerts through. It's also just useful on a day-to-day for people who are in offices and moving around and not necessarily traveling, because we often see a gap there that you may get alerts going out to your to your staff, but then through one system, but you've then forgotten about those people who are traveling and they're on a different system, so they don't necessarily see alerts. We're doing things so differently. And what you guys are doing is actually kind of bringing that bit together and saying, you know, we can use this in a different way and we can support different areas of the organization, which is really, really important. So going back to Mark's question, I wanted to kind of get it down, but that is one of the biggest barriers. Nobody cares about travel risk management or travel security more than the travel security manager. And trying to get this across to your employees, especially in low-risk countries, and for them to understand the risks can be really difficult. And it's often met with apathy. So people aren't downloading apps. They're not looking at the instructions that you're sending them. They're not even often giving you their itineraries when they should be. The companies are facing all sorts of difficult situations, just trying to manage this. And when they go higher up, they're met with, well, you're already costing us money. And it's just very difficult to have that conversation. So what needs to happen is that we start having a different conversation with these departments. You need to understand what their issues are and how the travel data can solve them. So if we reverse what you guys have done, if it was the security managers starting with your team, with your tool, but they wanted to involve other departments, then they could go to finance and say, if you've got an issue with tax data, we can really support that. And that's what we're talking about now. And that's what's exciting about how technologies are evolving. But that's one of the biggest barriers, is being able to speak the language of the other departments, because the reason you do travel security is because you really care about people. People don't even care about themselves as much as they should do in certain situations, or they're blissfully unaware of how they're behaving. So it's about being able to use your data and solve other departments' problems. And I think if you can get your head around that, then your travel risk management program can really evolve.
Can I Peter, can I just add to that? I think Thierry's added a good point on duty of care there. And it's, how to, and Bex is talking about how you implement this. And yes, it's a leadership responsibility. There's no doubt about that. If we go back to the 1950s, there was no health and safety. But slowly over time, we now have, in the main, most people know what health and safety is. So if we take the audience and we stand them in front of a construction site and we say, okay, before you step onto this construction site, what do you think you should have? Most people will be able to list 5 key items that they need because it's become part of our culture and how we operate. And duty of care is the same. It's the kind of a newer version of duty of care. So instead of, there are some places you send me to, if you give me a hard hat and a high-vis vest, great. The health and safety part is covered, but that's not what I need because actually I'm worried about someone breaking into my hotel room, or I'm worried about having my phone stolen, or I'm worried about these things. So it's an extension. And over time, I think health and safety nowadays, if you fail to comply, you're going to get hurt financially. You'll get hurt financially and your reputation will be damaged. And duty of care will slowly over time start to take the same. And it is, there have been some enormous fines handed out to people that have failed to maintain duty of care. So a lot of this will be a compliance issue further down the line as it evolves.
Thanks very much, Bex and Darren, and also Joerg for your insights. I think summarized it very well. I could not have said it better. Thank you also, Thierry, for I think very strong point raising it in the chat. Apologies for going a little bit over time, but thank you very much for joining. Shuba, also thanks a lot for doing the demo. If there's any further question on WorkFlex SOS, but also on Callida Freemont or TRM trainings from Bex, any medical support that we can be of help with, then please reach out. You know where to find us. And then we wish you all a very happy rest of the day. Thank you.
Thanks very much.